All right, so next tip of the day here, and one of the things that I come across a lot with leadership training when I'm invited into companies to work with maybe sales directors or managers or even business unit leaders and managing directors is often this thing of control. It happens more, it seems, with smaller businesses I've found, as what's happened is the person who's built it basically has a difficulty in letting things go. What I want to talk about is the importance of being able to do that, but in a controlled environment. So what's essential is if you're going to really grow, like really scale, you can't do it on your own. It might not be that you employ people and not necessarily on payroll, but certainly you're going to need some kind of ecosystem where you've got people around you, maybe who look after sales or marketing or web or whatever it might be. And this group of people is going to be kind of your family that helps you, thrive and scale up your business. The thing is, when you first start, we all understand when you start businesses that you've so got to be able to take control of things. You can't make excuses. You've got to do every bit yourself. But what's essential is that you get to a point where you're willing to let things go and have someone take over the reins on certain areas for you. Yes, someone might not be able to edit a video quite in the way you would, but if they do it 80% as well, then that's great, right? Because it's being done. So you don't have to spend 3 hours on it. It's being done pretty well, and that's really how it works. Of course, you could produce better creative for your for your website graphics yourself, but again, that's going to take you hours. Get a guy in to do it. Get some lady who really knows how to make creative look good, and then suddenly you're freeing up time, and it makes the difference. It might not be quite what you would have done, but it's going to be great because you've saved that time as well. But all of this is difficult because you've got to let it go to start with. You've got to be willing to hand the reins over if you're really going to thrive and grow. So today's tip is about testing that. And it's pertinent timing because in about a week from now, I'm going to be having surgery. So I'm going to be completely unconscious for the best part of many hours as I have surgery on my bowel. And what's going to happen is that for that day, probably the next day, and for a couple of others of that week, there's going to be a situation where I can't be with my business like I normally would. So the real test is, how do the systems operate without me being there? Now, I've done this before about a year ago. It was fantastic because I had a day when I had to be in hospital, and it was a case of flicking a few switches, making a couple of calls and saying, right, you've got the lead on this. You're going to need to take the lead on this. We've done this before. You know what you're in charge of, and just manage a few things and then know that everything's taken care of. The question for you is, if you were to take a step out of your business for a day, what would happen? Would the business be fine? Then if that's the case, then the question is, what would it be like if it's 2 days, 3 days, if you had to be out for a week? That may really be the case for me. I may be very compromised for a week as I'm recovering, and actually the consultant said that the surgery should be probably best part of 2 weeks recovery, so I have to be very gentle about what I'm doing. So we'll see how that pans out, but the reality is that if I hadn't put things in place, this whole thing could fall apart. That's unacceptable because it's not just about keeping my business ticking over, but moreover, the fact that people rely on its success. The income from it pays for people. They pays people's money and wage and things like that. It pays for the family and the household as well, and of course the business needs that to make sure it can go from one day to the next. So it's that organism that needs to be able to breathe without you as its life support. The question is, have you got that? So have you built in that redundancy? Have you got that contingency planning in place? So if you're not there on the ground for the business for a period of time, is it going to be okay? For many, the answer is no. For many, a business couldn't last a day because it would just drop off a cliff. It would fall off the radar. Some of you rely on yourselves too much for social media. Some of you rely on yourselves too much for sales, for instance. And I get it to start with, but you've got to watch that as soon as possible. So this tip of the day is really essential. And the idea is, rather than wait for a time when it has to be forced upon you, such as with me, I have to have this surgery, it needs to be more a case of saying, well, why didn't I test it? Go have a holiday, go have a weekend off, go have 2-3 days out of your office and shut things down, set the systems up and see how it goes. Can the business survive? And if it can't, look at that, because you need to move your business not just to be self-sufficient in terms of managing itself operationally, but also in terms of sales and things as well. And the term someone once gave to me was, can your business really wipe its own face? And when it can wipe its own face is a wonderful thing, because now you have that flexibility. You can say to yourself, do you know what? The family needs me tomorrow. Some curveballs happen today. I need to be out of the office. I need to be away from the business. I need to be able to leave the tools and go away and then come back and know that everything's as it should be. And if you can do that, or at least work towards it, and then test it as well, and it's be a good test in a week's time, then it's a really good sign that your business has many of the correct foundations. So try it out, see what you think. It's important to make sure you have that in place. Don't overlook it. Don't think, yeah, but I'm fine, I'll just make sure I push through. You don't know what's around the corner, so you need to be making sure that you have that contingency in place. Okay. Let me know if there's any additional comments you're going to add to this kind of thing. Put some comments in underneath. Like it if you do. But I'm interested in what you've done to make sure you've got contingency planning in place, or redundancy. How have you made sure your business is going to live? Or haven't you? Are you just not even thinking of this? And if that's the case, it's important to make sure you step up and do the right thing, because your business is vulnerable unless it's prepared for when you might need to take a step away. Okay, I'll see you soon. Take care.